Gambian president addresses the 75th United Nations General Assembly debate. South Africa is widening efforts in the fight against the COVID-19 as vaccine trials continues. Lawmaker warns governments against complacency over the country's territorial integrity. These and more coming your way on The World Today. This is Africa TV and many thanks for joining us. I am Amadou Kante and now the news in detail, and we begin with matters of the UN General Assembly because the President of the Gambia, Adama Barrow, has told the United Nations General Assembly on Thursday that the coronavirus pandemic threatens country's existence. He said the effects of the COVID-19 devastation is immense on healthcare systems, which are fragile, but he says the Gambia's National Development Plan is left shattered by the pandemic. Here is President Barrow speaking.
The Gambia's economy has shrunk to 2% of GDP and it continues to contract. Our tourism sector, which is a major employer and foreign exchange earner, is devastated, and unemployment is increasing rapidly. In this complex situation, my government has, with the support of partners, instituted social protection programs to ease the adverse impact on our people. These interventions are not sustainable without external support. Implementation of our National Development Plan 2018-2021 has been hampered by the pandemic, as the UN Decade of Action for the implementation of Agenda 2030 has been undermined by the outbreak of the pandemic.
That was Gambia's President Adama Barrow addressing the United Nations General Assembly debate moments ago. And we stay with matters of the UN General Assembly because world leaders are taking turns to address the 75th United Nations General Assembly. On Wednesday, it was Ghana's turn, and its President Nana Akufo-Addo said any potential vaccine rather for the coronavirus should be accessible to everyone. The newly elected chairperson of ECOWAS also called for support to address the political problems in Mali. Ibrahima John tells us more of that in this report.
In advocating for all on the vaccine of the novel coronavirus, Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo said his country secured success in the fight against COVID-19. He stated that this achievement is accomplished due to the determination of all. President Akufo-Addo made these remarks in his address to the UN General Assembly via video link.
We in Ghana have, however, chalked modest successes in trying to defeat the virus through resolute actions by my government, the cooperation of the Ghanaian people, and the grace of the Almighty.
As dozens of countries are competing to produce a vaccine for the coronavirus, the Ghanaian leader pointed out that any available vaccine for the treatment of COVID-19 should be accessible to everyone on earth, saying that there should not be any form of discrimination in the distribution of the vaccine.
If the answer to this pandemic lies in finding a vaccine, that vaccine should be made available to the whole world, rich and poor alike, developed and developing, all races and all beliefs. The virus has taught us that we are all at risk and there's no special protection for the rich or a particular class. For as long as the virus exists, whatever medical solutions that might be found should be made available for all in aid of our common humanity.
President Akufo-Addo, who has been newly elected as the chairperson of the regional bloc ECOWAS, requested support of the UN and its member states in quelling the crisis in Mali.
Following the coup d'etat that ousted President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, which has been compounded further by the activities of terrorists and violent extremists who are in control of large swathes of that country in some parts of the Sahel region. We have learned, most often through bitter experience, that terrorism and violent extremism are not restricted to particular geographic locations or jurisdictions, as the impact of a single terrorist incident in one part of the world resonates throughout the world. It is incumbent on the UN, and indeed all member states, to lend their support to the efforts being made by ECOWAS to restore normalcy to Mali and help us defeat the scourge of terrorism.
The General Assembly, led by its newly elected President Volkan Bozkır, has been carrying out its work virtually to guarantee business continuity and mitigate the spread of the pandemic. Every September, member states usually meet in the UN headquarters in New York for the annual session and its highly visible general debate. The modalities of this 25th session differ from the past in light of the pandemic. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Ibrahim John.
ECOWAS Chairperson Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana calls for support to bring peace and stability in Mali while addressing the UN General Assembly on Wednesday. From the report, we come back home because Gambia's National Assembly on Wednesday began a debate on the last week's State of the Nation address by President Adama Barrow, commenting on issues of defense and security. One lawmaker argues that the country's territorial integrity was compromised. Details of that in this report by Ndesise.
Last week, President Adama Barrow said in his annual address that the Gambia depends on the armed and security forces to protect her sovereignty, and that the country's navy has intensified routine sea patrols to secure borders. When Honorable Lamin S. Sane, the National Assembly member for Brikama South, took his turn to comment on the president's statement, he said territorial integrity of the Gambia is compromised.
I want to quote, in responding to the call to duty, the Gambian Navy has intensified routine sea patrols to enforce the law and ensure the security of our borders and the territorial integrity of the nation. This is something which is very, very key, Madam Speaker. One thing I'm not very much comfortable, and I definitely was expecting this thing to be captured. What type of strategy? You're talking about the territorial integrity and our borders in terms of water. How about the land areas? And I have been crying over and over with regards to the area in which I'm coming from. It's very threatening right now. Our country has been seriously encroached. And if you look at it, the territorial integrity of this country has been compromised over and over.
Another member of the National Assembly said farmers find it very difficult to have access to fertilizer because they cannot afford to buy it.
With reference to inputs, 11,000 metric tons of fertilizer are available for sale, while 50 metric tons of groundnut seeds have been provided to farmers on loan, repayable from their produce. Here, I just want to elaborate few on the fertilizer side. This fertilizer for sale, Madam Speaker, it has given most farmers a problem and constraints because the way and manner the fertilizer have been sold was very tough for farmers because they have to go pay for to realign, then later go with their receipt to the depot to buy.
The Barrow administration secured 11,000 tons of fertilizer and sold it to farmers. The government also sold on credit 50 tons of groundnut seeds to farmers, the majority of whom are poor and cannot afford 3 meals a day. For iAfrica TV, I am Ndesise.
Lawmakers in Banjul debate on the State of the Nation's address delivered by the President last week next to North Africa because preparations has begun in earnest for the opening of schools in Egypt after months of closure due to the coronavirus global pandemic. Parents were out to buy school materials for their children ahead of the new school year. Well, let's have more details of that in this report.
Parents are finalizing preparations for the new school year, and this venue is supplying them with all their needs, from uniforms to stationery, bags, books, and much more. Yusriya has brought her granddaughter to shop here.
I come to the fair every year because prices and discounts are good. I bring my grandchildren to choose for themselves what they want. Judy liked all the stuff here and bought a lot of things. She's happy.
The fair is an annual event, but this year is different. It comes amid the coronavirus pandemic, and it's clear from the moment you arrive. Health measures start from the entrance gate. There were fears the coronavirus would prevent many people from attending the expo.
On the contrary, I don't feel the coronavirus has had any effect on attendance here. The place is full of people buying what they want. The price is much better than the market with better quality. Everything you need is available.
In spite of the discounts on offer, traders say sales have been affected by COVID-19.
Because of the coronavirus, it's natural that trade and the markets slow down. That's why we are providing good prices and big discounts of up to 40% to encourage people to purchase more.
There is another setback for vendors. The government has reverted to online education and studying from home as a precaution against coronavirus. This meant laptops have replaced books as a main studying tool.
Of course it affected book sales, but online studies are mainly for middle school and high school students. Book sales dropped by about 30% till now because the youngsters still need them at school.
COVID-19 has influenced nearly every aspect of people's lives. The trend at the expo shows that even the education system may not return to how it was before the pandemic.
From the report there in Cairo, Egypt, we come back home and also report on education matters in the Gambia because the Minister of Basic and Secondary Education on Wednesday received 250,000 worth of thermometers and face masks. The materials are meant to be shared with schools and the face masks given to students with special needs. Ibrahim Kebi Sanko tells us more of that in this report.
The items are donated by Smart Business Group, a technology enterprise to help the education sectors as authorities prepare to reopen schools after 6 months of closure. The Minister of Basic and Secondary Education, Claudiana Cool, hailed the gesture as important. She said the materials will help the ministry provide a safer environment for students when schools reopen.
He has thought of making this wonderful donation to the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education so that we shall be able to reopen schools and ensure the safety of all the people who will be in the school environment, not only the students, but the teachers, the school administrators, and even the ancillary staff, and anybody who will enter into our school premises.
Omar Njai, the Chief Executive Officer of Smart Business Group, said they are responding to the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education's call for support to help reopen schools as soon as possible.
We've seen the Minister has called on people to come out.
We have seen the Minister has called on people to come out and help because they want to reopen schools, and we believe it is the responsibility of every citizen to help and make sure schools are open and our children are safe in school.
Jada Sanyang, the Deputy Permanent Secretary of MOPSI, applauded Smart Business Group for donating thermometers and special need face masks worth $250,000.
To witness this handing over of the thermometers as well as the facial face masks. These are equipment that are very difficult to come by. Not just in the Gambia, but in particular at this moment when the demand for them is very high.
The eruption of COVID-19 pandemic has affected every sphere of life and may forever change how we have always lived. Of all the segments of life affected, education has been one of the hardest hit sectors. Reporting for iAfrica TV, I am Ibrahim Akebi Songo.
The Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education received support as preparation for a resumption of schools begins in the Gambia. And with that report, we will now take a break and come back shortly with the remaining update stories. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back, and you are watching the World Today News Bulletin on Africa TV. And now to the rest of the stories. Now, the rejection of the draft constitution by the National Assembly has left a bad impression on the so-called New Gambia, where progressive laws were expected to lay the foundation of a truly democratic country after a 22-year dictatorship. On Thursday, the opposition United Democratic Party said Wednesday's decision killed the aspiration and hopes of Gambians. Omar Ahmad Toure tells us more of that in this report.
When Gambians elected a new leadership in 2016, they had hopes for a truly democratic country, and the government promised to give them that with a host of transitional programs. One of these programs was a new constitution that would usher in a third republic, one that was generally agreed to represent the wishes and aspirations of Gambians. But on Tuesday, the National Assembly, which had 3 years ago approved for the creation of a constitutional review committee, rejected the draft constitution, effectively blocking the two-term limit proposal. Reacting to the decision, a leading opposition politician, Usain Udabo, told journalists on Wednesday that the change that people voted for in 2016 is crushed by the country's leadership. The leader of the United Democratic Party likened the National Assembly's rejection of the draft constitution to the 1994 coup that brought a 22-year bloody dictatorship.
A transition to a more democratic dispensation. It has equally wiped away from the citizens of this country the right to express themselves democratically at a referendum as dictated by the 1997 Constitution. This government has failed in its duty to prioritize the interests of the citizenry and will be held accountable for their actions which led to the rejection of the constitutional reform process.
Usain Udabo said the rejection of the new constitution doesn't represent the will of the majority. He calls on other stakeholders to demand answers from the government and hold it to account.
It is a demonstration of contempt for the Gambian people by a wayward administration and its supporters. In fact, in the personal failure of the Barrow administration, it is evident that the government has lost the trust and confidence of the Gambians and should resign, as it has demonstrated that they cannot lead the affairs of state at its basic level.
Dabo also said the President and the Minister of Justice failed to address the importance of the draft constitution. He said President Barrow's cabal attacked the document and that the performance of the executive and the minister is a betrayal to the aspirations of the majority of Gambians.
No single member of the executive branch weighed in on the draft following the submission to the National Assembly, and it was especially disappointing to see the Attorney General and Minister of Justice who tabled the promulgation bill before Parliament, essentially abandoning the legislation to norms and projecting difference for the passing of a bill that he himself tabled at the National Assembly. He did not advance any convincing arguments to show members of the National Assembly to support the bill.
The UDP leader hailed the drafters of the new constitution and the lawmakers who voted in its favor, saying those who rejected the draft constitution will be in the bad books of history. Dabo said he is confident the UDP will win next year's election and will reintroduce the draft constitution promulgation bill. For Africa TV, I'm Omar Hamature.
And that was the United Democratic Party, of course, party leader there, speaking on the rejection of the new draft constitution by lawmakers in Banjul. Now we stay in matters of the lawmakers, because the Gambian lawmaker has on Wednesday called for more investment in the country's fragile health sector as the National Assembly discusses President Adama Barrow's State of Nations address delivered last week. And let's have more details of that in this report.
The Gambia is one of the poorest countries in the world, and the country has a fragile health system, further ravaged by the coronavirus pandemic. Before the coronavirus arrived in the country in March this year, poor people's access to public health care was limited by a lack of drugs and, in many cases, the lack of ambulances or fuel for ambulances. Blood transfusion, which is in very high demand, is scarce, and women and children died during childbirth or shortly after. Today, many of those seeking treatment in public health facilities are given scripts for drugs that they have to buy from private pharmacies, something which is quite expensive for ordinary Gambians. Last week, President Adama Barrow said his government remains steadfast and dedicated to providing affordable and quality health care services, particularly in times of hardship or calamities. When National Assembly members began discussing the president's speech on Wednesday, Honorable Ndeyasin Seka, a nominated member, said it was important for President Barrow to be able to tell how problems in the sector will be addressed or are being addressed.
I admire the President coming to this National Assembly to deliver his address. But I would love, before coming to the National Assembly to deliver his address, let him, what is wrong with him paying visits to the departments to see what is happening? Sometimes cut and paste, sometimes are issues, and we should really do away from those things. I admire everything he said. We have a lot of problems, but what are the strategies to make sure that we overcome those constraints? Those are the issues. We cannot say that everything is going right. No. Especially we know that we are in this transition period.
Honorable Seka's position was supported by the National Assembly member for Talinding, who added that the country's health sector needs more investment.
On the women and social protection, Madam Speaker, I think a lot needs to be done. We have a lot of infant mortality. If we want our health sector to be attractive to the investors, I think more need to invest in our health. A lot of women are dying, and therefore I think the government should do something to see whose negligence such occur or to attract our health system.
Despite efforts by the previous and the current government, the country's health system is still under great pressure and is struggling with infrastructure, equipment, drugs and personal problems as qualified nurses and doctors look for better paying jobs in private healthcare or abroad. For Africa TV, I am Daisy.
Lawmakers in Banjul calls for more government support in the country's health system. And from that report next to South Africa, because in a bid to find a lasting solution, South Africa is leading the first trial in Africa for a vaccine against the coronavirus. One of the experts leading the vaccine development highlighted the progress and challenges. Well, more than 100 COVID-19 vaccine candidates have been tested around the world, according to the World Health Organization. We have more details of that in this report.
South Africa is spearheading the first trial in Africa to test the vaccine against the coronavirus. The trial aims to find a vaccine that will prevent the virus that causes COVID-19. This hospital, the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital in Soweto, is one of the trial sites. According to Wits University, some 2,000 people between the ages of 18 and 65 have already been enrolled in what is widely considered to be one of the earliest and most advanced trials for a vaccine to tackle the coronavirus pandemic. The trial is being led by Professor Shabir Mahdi, a global leader in vaccine development.
So currently there's 2 COVID-19 vaccine studies underway in South Africa. The one is the study the vaccine that was developed at the University of Oxford, and the second is a vaccine that was developed by Novavax, which is a biotech company in the United States. In the University of Oxford vaccine candidate, we almost completing enrollment into that study. The target size was about 2,000 participants.
But challenges persist. After a participant fell ill earlier this month, the COVID-19 vaccine was voluntarily put on hold. Even though the medical event took place in the United Kingdom, the trial was stopped worldwide. But the vaccine trials have recently recommenced locally. Many are now keen to know when the vaccine will likely be available.
And I think based on what's happening currently in the Northern Hemisphere, Europe and the United Kingdom, Italy, Spain, France, where they're seeing a resurgence of the virus, it's very likely that in those countries they would be able to determine whether the vaccine protects against COVID-19 or not during the course of this year, in the next few months. So that might very well happen in those countries, which is great news.
The World Health Organization says nearly 180 vaccine candidates are being tested around the world, but none has yet completed clinical trials. The organization has said it does not expect the vaccine to meet its efficacy and safety guidelines in order to be approved this year because of the time it takes to test them safely.
So in terms of when a vaccine is likely to be licensed, it's obviously a global initiative. And right now there's about 9 different vaccines which are in what we call phase 3 studies, which is sort of your pivotal studies upon which you can decide or determine the safety of the vaccine, as well as whether the vaccine protects against COVID-19.
Wits University is collaborating with Oxford University on the vaccine trials, with funding from the South African Medical Research Council and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
The trial for COVID-19 vaccine continues around the world, and South Africa is taking the lead in Africa. And with that report, we bring this news bulletin to an end. But for more details on this and other stories, you can also log onto our website on iafrica.tv. But you can also join Sohna Tunkra at 19:30 GMT or 7:30 local time for the Gambia 24 News Bulletin. But for now, though, many thanks for the pleasure of your company. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and bye for now.